Hello everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down the full album by the multidisciplinary musician known as Plastov, and in this episode, we're going to be combining a bunch of things that we don't normally do. We are going to look at some graphics, but we're going to combine some notes on the individual tracks. We're going to talk about the program used here. We're going to break down each individual song within this album. We're also going to bring in some quotes from the original musician, as well as the record label 103 that they're working with. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So to start off, this is a very heavy electronic work of music, right? It consists of about 9 songs here, each of which range from, about 3 minutes to a full length of close to 9 minutes as well. And so I guess to start off here, let's go ahead and look at the original graphic for the album here. All right, so the original artist, I've talked and studied about 2 of his visual works so far, and this is no different from that. It is very abstract. You see this stunning sense of texture, which I see in a lot of his works as well. And so if you look very closely, the original album appears to be in the lower right region there, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah, so the original album cover here takes that very small corner in the lower right, and the original piece here, of course, combines gold. We have kind of this pinkish purple. We have this very dark, almost navy green, if you will. A very abstract work, no doubt. Have a stunning sense of texture, gives a little bit of energy here, and of course does also have that kind of bordered frame all around there, and you can see part of that within this composition, not necessarily the gray border, but you can see that white one as well. So that's the graphic that was used for the original album cover here. I just want to bring that in and kind of point to that for a second. But without further ado, I'm going to bring in a quick quote from the original artist. He's kind of talking about his inspiration, what he's trying to achieve here. So the program used here is going to be Music Generator 2. And I will not lie, I had never heard of this program until I decided to study this work. And so, of course, you can see the album cover there. It is on PlayStation 2. I had a PlayStation 2 quite a while ago, but I never saw this program. But as far as I know, there is a kind of online community that really generated around Music Generator 2. So I find that incredibly interesting. And you can see the graphics that are used here, of course, very retro. Of course, this was, I believe it was released in 2001, so you can see, of course, retro. We absolutely love to see it here. It appears to, you can create your own track. Of course, you have different layers within the work as well. You can put in different keys, you can put in strings. There's a lot of different options to work with there. And of course, you have your play, fast forward, rewind, record, so many different options there. And it's pretty interesting. MTV, of course, a cultural icon, no doubt, especially throughout the 90s. And it's almost inevitable they would release something like this. And I find that pretty interesting. This gives the ability to create music on something as accessible as a PlayStation 2. So that is the program that was used to create the album before us here. And like I said, I find that incredibly interesting how they just incorporate that there. We'll get rid of that. And so, yeah, that was a program used here. And the original artist, briefly mentions that, especially in the lower right, but we're going to look at that quick quote and see what we can learn. So, the original artist, Lastovica, talks about, I grew up listening to mid-90s electronica and industrial. Both were getting traction at a time when I was most open to new listening experiences beyond what's being played by mainstream radio. Of course, you see that kind of theme of the avant-garde, if you will, kind of going away from mainstream radio. Video games have a heavy influence on my sound too. I mean, I'm using a video game to make music, a natural tool to pick up for a gamer. Yeah, once again, we looked at Music Generator 2, right? And like he says, it is a natural tool to pick up for a gamer. So there's a sense of accessibility within that I find incredibly intriguing. Personally, I was born in the year that this was released, so, I never saw this program, but it seems to be pretty accessible within that as well. He goes on to say that he doesn't know that he creates a sound of a nostalgia. It's more like a desire to contribute something worthy to the genre, even if that doesn't necessarily fit neatly within its boundaries. He says he thinks he's hitting very close to that mark, and considering the software he uses isn't geared towards those genres, such as industrial, replicating the sound is more of a task of, can I even make this kind of music, than a process of proving whether or not it's even possible. we see that pretty often with artists, right? They're trying to push the boundary to see what is possible. Art, by definition, is pushing into the unknown to create something new. So I just want to bring that in real quick. He talks about the influences of 90s electronic and industrial, but he wanted to move away from the mainstream radio and create something for himself, as well as just seeing can he even create that kind of music in the first place. And I will tell you now, he certainly can. This was preempted by 2 albums, as well as a few more far before that. I looked at Video Gaze and Video Strays, all to really prepare myself for the listening of this album. And I can tell you, this is his most concise and polished album yet. He takes everything that he's learned from the past. He's created a lot of different songs, no doubt. He's been working for about 2 decades or 20 years. At this point, the program which he uses is about 22 years old or so. So you can see, the evolution of that through time is just incredibly intriguing. So I just want to bring that quote in real quick, talk a little bit about his original inspiration. He is working with 103 Records. They gave him the ability to really partner and kind of have some backing within that. We'll talk a bit deeper in that after we break down each individual track, but yeah, let's jump right into it. So like I said, there's about 9 songs on this album there, the likes of Assembly Shrine, Hyperlunk, Sludgehog, Zapathy, Roosevelt, Songbird, Astral Planogram, Glorious Porpoise, and Chewing Gun. And so I would say my favorite is going to be Roosevelt. And before I go any deeper into this album, I will say you can listen to this on pretty much anywhere you listen to music. We're talking Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere from Pandora to iHeartRadio, so many different places to really appreciate, discover, and really listen to this album for yourself. So before we go deep into this, if you want to look at the individual songs before I add my comments, I would surely suggest it. It is a very experimental, very heavy industrial electronic track, and a very stunning one at that. So I'm going to bring this in real quick. We're going to talk each song one by one, and I'm also going to overlay some audio clips within this to kind of give you a hint about what exactly I am talking about. So I'm just going to move this to the left here. Like I said, we're going to go a bit deeper in a quote from 103 Records here in a second, but to start off, we have the track list there. Like I said, about 9 songs. 3 each on each panel. And so starting off Assembly Shrine, this is the song which the entire album is named after. It is a very short, but it's a concise track. When people talk about the word concise, they typically mean short, but what I mean, it is short, it is polished, it is necessary. It didn't need to go on any longer or any shorter, so certainly is a very good length. And it starts with this very dark, deep bass introduction, and it has this kind of growling back tones, and it even holds on to the last note to end there. I'm going to show these growling back tones to show you exactly what I mean real quick. So yeah, like I said, it's very dark, very bass, has like growling back tone, kind of shouts at you. And the next song is going to be Hyperlunk. It has kind of a, what I call a jazzy introduction, if you will. I really like the use of drums on this track. It even transitioned into this dreamy sounds. And at the very end, it even sounds like a band speaker, the amp, if you will, it kind of turns off at the very end as if they're practicing. So I'm going to show the transition into those dreamy sounds, and then I'm also going to show the ending there to show you exactly what I'm meaning. All right, so that was Hyperlunk, a very, jazzy. I love the use of drums on that track. There is another one, it has a pretty sick drum. Yeah, that was Glorious Porpoise. We'll go a bit deeper in that here in a second, but the next work is going to be Sludgehog. The intro actually reminded me of Funky Town, if you will. It has this kind of groove to it. The entire track is pretty groovy, but specifically that intro, I'm going to bring that in real quick and let y'all listen to that. So there's also this mix of harmonious and disharmonious notes kind of fighting for the viewer's attention, if you will. And there's a lighter but the groovy beat to end that as well. So I want to show you the intro like we just showed, and then also the mix of harmonious and disharmonious notes. All right, so that was Sludge Hog. Moving on, we have Zapathy, kind of like apathy, if you will. Very intense introduction. It hits you pretty hard, and this static also hits pretty hard, and there's kind of this intensity to the climax there as well. I'm going to show the static as well as the introduction to show you guys exactly what I'm meaning here. Alright, so that was Zapathy there. Moving on, probably my favorite song here is going to be Rustfelt. It has a very solemn introduction. I believe, yeah, this was the longest song on the track, almost 9 minutes there, but it is very long and drawn, and it's very flowy, if you will, but it is necessary within that. There's this journey. It almost feels as if I'm walking in a deep and dark dungeon. Most of this track gives me that as well, kind of a kind of grimy club, if you will, but that's what electronica and industrial does, right? So Rustfelt, it has a very solemn introduction. I really like the use of organs on this track. There are these deep pulses in the background, and also the high note initiates the ending. At the very end, there is also this kind of slow echo which fades us away as well. And so I'm going to show this solemn introduction. I'm going to show the use of organs, the deep pulses, and I'm also going to show that slow echo which fades us away. Let's listen to that real quick. Alright, so that was Rustfelt there. The next one is going to be Songbird. This is one that I briefly mentioned within the original writing, and I kind of contrasted that with, I believe, Rustfelt. Rustfelt is very solemn, slow, very deep, but Songbird is intense and fast. And so moving from Rustfelt to Songbird, it was, it got me, kind of reawoken, if you will, and having me paying even closer attention there. So this very intense intro, it just hits the chest intro instantly in Songbird. There's also these kind of ascending tones, which takes center stage further within the track, and there's also a very fast beat that's sure to make you want to dance as well. I'm going to show the intense intro as well as the ascending tones, show you guys exactly what I'm meaning here. Alright, so that was Songbird. Moving on, we have the work Astral Planogram. A very intense intro once again. There's also these crashing hi-hats, very intense. Like I said, the introduction as well as these crashing hi-hats really gets you paying attention within your seat if you're listening to this. And there's also everything, it seems to fight for center stage. Like I said, there is this sense of chaos to the track as well, but I'm going to show the crashing hi-hats as well as what I mean by this, fight for center stage. Just see exactly what I'm meaning here. Alright, so that was Astral Planogram. Moving on, Glorious Porpoise. I love the kind of play on words, if you will. Of course, porpoise versus purpose. kind of jumbled up there. It's a very fast introduction. Also, these galloping tones in the background, I really like those as well. There is this melody which fades away, but still sticks around in the background, and a very sick drum break as well. I'm going to show the galloping tones. I'm going to show the melody which fades away but still sticks around. I really like that. And also this very sick drum break. I absolutely loved it. I'm going to bring those in real quick. Those 3 clips. See what we can... Once again, I've jumbled up on that. Moving on, we have chewing gum. Of course, a play on chewing gum. There are these tones which overlap and morph into one another as if they're kind of converging. There also are these, chattering masses in the background, and also these long tones which then turn to staccato as well. I'm going to show the tones which overlap and morph kind of converge into one, as well as these long tones which turn to staccato, and then kind of these chattering demons which return once again, and see what we can learn here. So yeah, that was Chewing Gun, and I really hope y'all enjoyed. I don't typically bring in some audio clips, but I felt that highly necessary within this analysis here. This is the kind of most daring or experimental time I've ever tried to describe music. I really want to do this more often. I do have a background in music, and so it's kind of second nature to me, whether it be in my family or me kind of growing up and participating in bands and playing an instrument myself, but really hope to describe some more music more often. This was an absolute blast. Like I said, I listened to 2 of the previous albums. We had Video Gaze and Video Strays leading up to the release of Assembly Shrine. So this album was released on, I believe, August 4th, so pretty recently. And like I said, there is so many different places to discover this album. Pretty much everywhere you listen to music, from Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Pandora, so many different places to really appreciate and listen to this album. So check it out. Let me know if the notes which I created are accurate to what you're hearing and what y'all thought of the tracks as well yourselves. And to end this off, I'm going to talk a bit about 103 Records, see what we can learn here, and kind of in the collaboration which resulted in the culmination of this album here. I'm going to bring this in real quick. All right, last but not least, I have a few quotes from the director of 103 Records. His name is Decon Theed here, and he talks about meeting Plastov very long ago in these Facebook groups, kind of the precursor to the Discord server, and he was a connoisseur of the original program Music Generator 2. That certainly informed the collaboration, which has spanned for quite a long time at this point. He talks about the original artist, quote, "I would never call Plastov's work generic or lacking in identity, but what started as a distinct and unique sound has only gone further and further into unemulatable territory. You will know a Plastov track when you hear it. To say I'm eager for what the future holds would be a tremendous understatement." So absolutely love that. Unemulatable. That is a quote if I've ever saw one, and I certainly agree with that as well. And so he also added this as well. I'm going to bring this in. In addition, if you don't mind the tangent, that was not necessarily in our mission statement, he's been interested in featuring works from the users of MTV Music Series, the software besides myself on the label. As a lifelong user of this program, he says it warms his heart to see people embrace the software in this series. Of course, with all its quirks, he creates some truly breathtaking work that stands proud alongside pieces produced in more technically proficient programs or performed with live instrumentation. He also says he noticed a resurgence of interest in the software over the last few years. It's probably that integration of the retro, integration of even nostalgia in a way as well. Gradually, more and more people have joined and interacted with the Music Discord server, which has itself leaped to the boom with not just new content, but closer technical analysis of the software, attempts at decompiling it, kind of trying to break it down and rebuild it up, if you will. And musicians and creatives well outside their little community have discovered the software and played around with it, often demonstrating and exposing it to their family large followings. With the potential music software boom on the horizon, it would be a missed opportunity not to capitalize on it to some extent. I find that so interesting. I absolutely love going back to look at some of the older programs, and this is certainly included within that. I love how he talks about, other people trying to decompile it, trying to do a technical analysis on the software and kind of adopt it to create it itself. I've worked with FL Studio, but I've never worked with something like this, so it is highly intriguing. And like I said, this is from the director of 103 Records, known as Deacon or Decon Theeds. So I just want to bring that in real quick and talk a bit about the original one. But yeah, that's all I have for today. This was a very fun album to listen to. It's very experimental. I've never talked about or just tried to describe music to this depth, which I did today. So really hope y'all enjoyed. Like I said, this is not what I'd usually do, so kind of adventuring into new territory, and had an absolute blast doing so. So like I said, if y'all enjoyed, go check out the original artist Plastov, doing some amazing stuff in multiple different mediums, including the music which we talked about today. Once again, you can listen to pretty much everywhere you listen to music, from Pandora to Spotify to Apple Music, iTunes, so many different places to really appreciate and listen to this album. So once again, listen to the original artist Plastov doing some amazing stuff, and also support 103 Records, which he collaborates and has a lot of support behind. So once again, go listen to that album and let me know what y'all think. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.